Hey, how's it going, everybody? I hope that everyone is having a great 4th of July. The reason I came on here, I wanted to talk about something that I was thinking about. Uh, Recently, um, affirmative action got took, right? Okay, so I just want to talk about a little bit about, what is affirmative action? And has that really been beneficial for African American people in this country? Has that really helped us, or has it hurt us, or whatever? I don't know. I'm just thinking about this. So I just did a little research and I put together a slight presentation. I just got some videos. I just want to talk about it a little bit, and I really want to talk about the the inception of affirmative action. How did that come about? And what was the reason behind affirmative action even being created? So I got this video. I'm gonna play a little bit of it, and I just want to just think about that, talk about this a little bit, and see if this kind of makes sense to you. Um, just let me know what you think.
For more than 50 years, colleges have taken different approaches towards admissions to make their campuses more diverse. Considering an applicant's race, generally called affirmative action, has long been standard at universities from UPenn to Harvard, but not anymore. The Supreme Court has ruled that no college in the US can consider an applicant's race in admissions. 9 states have already banned this practice. California did almost 25 years ago. Just enough time for a detailed study on its consequences.
Once you have the data set in hand, there's an awful lot you can learn, honestly, pretty quickly, right? Basically, what I'm doing is just differences in means. What happened to the kids after 98? What happened to the kids before 98? Just those comparisons tell you an awful lot about not just what happened in California, but I think what we can expect to happen across the country.
Here's how affirmative action changed college admissions and what the future of higher education might look like without it. Before affirmative action, selecting which of these student applicants would be accepted was fairly simple. Most colleges would essentially filter students. They'd set factors like a minimum GPA or a minimum test score, and voila, there's your pool of accepted students. Obviously, the more selective the school, the higher those standards were. But
A big part of both test scores and grades are pre-18 educational investment and, honestly, non-educational investment. The degree to which you had a stable household, the degree to which you had some notion of being able to focus on your work. The better a high school you go to, the better the test score you get. The better sort of access to resources outside of high school, like tutoring or other services, that you had access to before 18, the better you test.
it's clear if you break down SAT scores by the background of the student. Students from higher income households score higher. Same if you look at who grew up in a household with a parent with a graduate degree versus no degree. That also reflects in race, with Black and Hispanic students scoring lower than white and Asian students. So in the 1970s, when UC Berkeley's admissions really just looked at GPA and test scores, the student population was less than 5% Black and Hispanic.
Students who might have been really high ability just weren't able to get the kind of education that would lead them to the kind of high standardized tests that would get them into a school like Berkeley. These schools recognized that they needed some way of admitting those students, and so they started affirmative action policies to try to bring in students from sort of every part of, in this case, the state of California.
So in the 80s, they began considering race in their admissions decisions. It worked. By the 90s, they would chart students on a social diversity index. If you were low income and a minority and had moderate grades and test scores, you were in. If you were high income and white, you needed higher scores to get in. Some colleges, like the UC Davis School of Medicine, used quotas, utilizing a similar filtering system, but a few spots would be reserved for minority applicants. In the late 70s, a white student named Backy fell here. Not good enough to get in among other white applicants, but with higher test scores and GPA than the minority students who got in. He sued, claiming discrimination. It made it to the Supreme Court, he won, and was admitted. The court ruled that while the goal of achieving a diverse student body is sufficiently compelling to justify consideration of race in admissions decisions, specific quotas went too far. More than 24 Supreme Court cases have followed, including the landmark Grutter v. Bollinger in 2003, which upheld that race could be considered as part of a highly individualized, holistic review of each applicant's file. That's essentially how affirmative action has worked the last 20 years. Instead of just filtering a pool of applicants, most colleges look at each person individually. Like Harvard will look at SAT and GPA, but also things like extracurricular activities, essays, awards, life experiences, recommendations, leadership, and yes, race. But this is exactly what the Supreme Court has now struck down. In 2 separate cases against Harvard and the University of North Carolina, plaintiffs argued this holistic approach was just a cover for discrimination against white and Asian students. The Supreme Court agreed, ruling that eliminating racial discrimination means eliminating all of it. The student must be treated based on his or her experiences as an individual, not on the basis of race. Many universities have for too long done just the opposite, which means in this holistic review, race can no longer be considered.
To the degree that these universities want to maintain their current level of racial diversity, California has shown that that is infeasible, at least given the policies that California has tried to implement.
In the 90s, Californians voted for Proposition 209, which banned public universities from considering race. Zach Bleemer conducted a massive study in California, following students that applied before and after Prop 209, looking at where they eventually enrolled, graduated, and then at their wage statements.
So you can see, so long as they stay in the state of California, where they work and how much they earn all the way through 2020, 25 years almost after the affirmative action ban was implemented.
What he found was that Black and Hispanic enrollments at more selective schools, like Berkeley, dramatically fell when they couldn't include race in their admissions process. Moderately selective schools had almost no change, but enrollment at less selective schools actually rose. Because most Black and Hispanic students didn't not go to college, they just went to less esteemed ones.
You got this cascade effect of Black and Hispanic students on average enrolling at a university that's just a little bit less selective than the universities they used to have access to. Kids who used to go to Berkeley are now going to UC Davis. Kids who used to go to UC Davis are now going to UC Santa Cruz. What happened is pretty substantial negative ramifications for these students.
They became less likely to earn STEM degrees, less likely to go to graduate school. Those with the lowest GPA and test scores became less likely to even graduate. And overall, Black and Hispanic students earned less in their careers than those admitted before Prop 209.
One thing we've learned from affirmative action bans is that the kids who are admitted to more selective universities as a result of race-based affirmative action tend to receive greater value from those institutions in terms of the degree to which those institutions lead them to more successful jobs or more success generally in the labor market than the white or Asian students who tend to take their places after the end of affirmative action programs.
Bleemer has also studied the effects of what's called race-neutral admissions policies, which can include outreach and income-based admissions, as has Georgetown University. They both found the same result.
It seems like all of these race-neutral alternatives that universities can implement have a tendency toward increasing the diversity of campuses, but they don't get you anywhere close to the level of racial diversity that's provided by race-based affirmative action.
Harvard said if it were to not include race in their holistic review, Black and Hispanic enrollment will decline by almost half. Berkeley, even though it has made strides since Prop 209 to enroll more Hispanic students, the Black student population is still below where it was when it could consider race in admissions.
I think we'll see declines in Black and Hispanic enrollment, potentially in some cases quite severe declines in the next couple of years. And as a result, you're going to have this sort of downward shift, Black and Hispanic students enrolling at less selective schools than they had access to previously. There's no clear silver bullet for such universities just to maintain diversity as it is right now.
All right. Let's talk about that for a minute. Okay, so they're primarily saying, what I believe is kind of true. They're saying that, we have to be more accommodating for African American students. Basically, affirmative action was created specifically for African American people, right? So, but once that happened, what they did was exploded it. They said, okay, so we're not just going to give it to black people, even though that's what it was designed or who it was designed for. We're not going to give it to them. We're going to give it to everybody. So in essence, what they did was dilute the power of affirmative action. So for all intents and purposes, affirmative actions was really no good for us after that because we could not do what other people have done. Well, I'm gonna just be real. What the Europeans have done, they had already came up with a plan of affirmative action. The whole Constitution is a form of affirmative action for Europeans exclusively. Now they would never give us that. They never have given us that, even though they said they did, during the civil rights movement and all that kind of stuff. They never really did. Because like I said, they just diluted it. Going to these colleges, what does that mean? See, they have implanted in us our mindset, if you will, a illusion that in order to do anything good, in order to have a good college education and to be able to succeed in life, the best way to do that is to go to a European school, Stanford, UC Berkeley, all of those colleges who have a standard of, I guess they have a high standard of accomplishment, but we don't do that for ourselves. We don't have the schools like that. They won't let us in, but we constantly are desiring to get into those schools. Why is that? We got our own schools, right? HBCUs. They are poorly funded. HBCUs, even the faculty isn't predominantly black. So how can you be in an HBCU? This don't make sense to me. You got an HBCU and the faculty, the people that are in charge, that are running it, that are having the classes, that are giving the students, education, are Asians, Europeans. And I'm not against that, but why can't we have it like a European school? Like we can, Harvard, where all of the faculty, damn near 100%, is white. You saying that we don't have enough people that are educated enough to teach our own people? Of course we do. But because we don't control the purse strings at these HBCUs, we are constantly always in a position of, we're constantly in a position of turmoil. We don't have the funds to even run the school. Well, they call the shots because they're the boss. They spending the money. What I think should happen, man, what I believe would be a better option is for us to take control of that. You got all of these guys and men and women that are alumni of these colleges that don't even give back to the colleges. Once they graduate, they're gone. You got people that are white that go to these schools. They don't send no money back to these schools. They just take from the school and then they go out. They gone. They bye-bye. So if just the alumni would start to put funds back into the school, donate to the school, come back to teach at the school. If they just would do that alone, that would help a tremendous amount. Man, I'm telling you, the things that we go through, it keeps us constantly on our heels. It constantly keeps us on our heels because we can never get a footing. And I think that is not, I think that's by design. So we can never be truly independent and to create our own destiny for our own children and ourselves. I want to play this little piece by Claude Anderson. I don't know if you heard of this brother, but let me show you something. He wrote this book right here, Powernomics. This is a hell of a good book. This brother has been preaching what he's saying, what I'm going to show you right now. He's been saying these things for 40 years. And I believe now we are just now beginning to really understand what he meant. Listen to this brother for a moment, please.
The first Constitution was an affirmative action plan. It is an affirmative action plan for whites. You hear white folk always talking about they're against affirmative action plans. They're only against affirmative action plan for you. Why? You see, because I wrote the other affirmative action plan. I wrote it in 1970 when I was overseeing the education system for Florida. I did not write an affirmative action plan for everybody. I wrote that plan for black people. I did not write that plan for minorities and poor folk and people of color, midgets, humpback, lesbians. I wrote it for black folk. Why? Because, see, affirmative action was supposed to be corrective action. Correcting something that the system and that the government has done consciously, historically, and continuously against a very specific group of people. That's what affirmative action is. Then why in the world do you all keep letting people put you in a bag called minority? No government hasn't done anything. Why are you letting them put in there, comparing you and equating you to gays? And well, now they're getting all the benefits. And Hispanics weren't even in the country. Now, when you go to the affirmative action plan, guess what? I got Eskimos in the affirmative action plan. Where did Eskimos pick cotton? They had nothing in the world to do with affirmative action. The government hasn't done anything to them. And you go into affirmative action program, the affirmative action program has been totally corrupted. The only people that should have been on the affirmative action plan in the first place were black folk. Because those are the only people that the government done some things to specifically exploit, misuse, abuse, subordinate, enslave, Jim Crow segregate, castrate, lynch, and do it and deny them education. Only black people. And you gotta go look at the affirmative action plan, they got everything in there except your dog from the neighbor's yard. And I don't see the blacks speaking up about it. They'll go right down and call, well, I'm a minority. How the hell you get to be a minority? What's a minority? I don't know what it is, Dr. Ennis, but I know I'm one. Because they call me one. And then leaving that point, I'm telling you, it is illegal and unconstitutional for you to equate anything to black folk in this country and make them equal. There's no constitutional basis to have any Asians, Arabs, Hispanics, women, gays in affirmative action programs or preferential programs. It is illegal. But I haven't seen one black person, not one black person, go to court and raise hell about it. As a matter of fact, I have whites that tell me that they were totally, absolutely surprised that when they started doing that no blacks spoke up and raised Cain about it. They just sat there and let it go down. That's why back in 1970, with the affirmative action plan, and when I wrote that plan, they turned around immediately and came up with a thing called Title IX. Because throughout history, every time you tried to do something for black folk, they would throw other groups in there to water it down and dilute it and give it to everybody so blacks wouldn't be anything left for black folk. And they come up with Title IX. How are you going to spend those money now since we dictated for black people and they got Title IX? Every county, all 67 of the letter back says any money comes out here, we're giving it to women. Not a penny would go to black folk. No black folk raised Cain. None of them said anything. They went down like that. That's what happened to your money. Because you see, and guess what it's backed by? It's backed by the United States Supreme Court. One of the most racist organizations in America. One of the most racist institutions in America is the United States Supreme Court. And I still see with a total, absolute amazement as to why black folk keep going to the court system. It doesn't make any sense. The deck is stacked by the United States Supreme Court. The United States Supreme Court has never, ever done anything to benefit black folk. Never. And they aren't going to do it. You've had the first 57 to 58 people appointed as justices to the United States Supreme Court were slave owners. And everything subsequent to the 1860s, they were either white racists or people who were totally indifferent to black folk. They're one of those two even to the present time. They're either racist, closet racist, or they're totally indifferent to black folk. They don't care about black folk. And what they've done is to make sure that the social construct What was set up in the Constitution about your being property and 3/5 of a human being and non-competitive will stay in existence. The guardians of racism in America is the United States Supreme Court. That's why when the second Constitution was written in the 1860s, and you had a few liberal whites, radical Republicans those days saying, we got to correct some of these things that's going on. And they crafted the second Constitution. The second Constitution was made up of the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and the 15th Amendment. And they also passed two civil rights laws, the 1865 and 1866 civil rights laws. They passed those laws all for black folk, newly freed slaves. They passed them for newly freed slaves. The Supreme Court jumped in immediately. And they used that same little schemes they use today. The first thing they did was said that all those civil rights laws that were passed from 1865 all the way up to the 1880, late 18, about 1889, all those civil rights laws were unconstitutional. Nobody gave them authority to do that. The United States Supreme Court does not have the authority to do what it's doing to you all right now. It doesn't even have the authority. But you don't see that black, you got all these black with law degrees. You see one raising hell about it? The United States Supreme Court does not have the authority to mess over you the way they're messing over you. That's why they've never done anything in your favor. They don't have that authority. Congress is the person that sets the rules and law. They are the elected bodies. Nobody elects anybody to the United States Supreme Court. They're the closest thing to royalty in this country, where they get a lifetime job and do nothing but sit there and mess with people based on their own personal prejudices and get away with it because nobody raises Cain about it. They don't have the authority. And so, but they didn't do anything after the Marlboro and Madison case back in 1803. Then here, jump up to 1857, and here comes a case called Dred Scott. In the Dred Scott case, a black man then was trying to get his freedom, having moved from Missouri to Illinois, and the Supreme Court, and went to the Supreme Court. And Justice Taney ruled in that, being the Chief Justice, says that in the final ruling in the Dred Scott decision in 1857, said a black man has no rights that a white man is bound to respect. That case, that issue has never been overruled.
And that is a fact. So, really to sum this up, we are pretty much just not respected in this country. We are deemed to be the permanent underclass in America, because I'm going to say that for a reason, because there are people that come from other countries. I mean, they come from India, they come from China, they come from Yugoslavia, Germany, anywhere, any country, and as soon as they get here, they have status above every African American in this country. Right? As soon as they get in here, as soon as they lay foot on this soil, they have more status than you do, and you've been here all of your life, and your ancestors have been here all of their lives. So we got to understand the only way that we change this, is that we have to do what every other nationality has done. And that's, you gotta, in essence, circle the wagons. You have to deal with your issues first. We can't continue to be, to love everybody and try to help everybody. I mean, you do that after you take care of your business. Once you take care of your business, okay, yeah, you can do that. You know what I'm saying? But right now, we are in no shape to take care of anybody else's business but our own. Just look at our society, look at our communities. Look at the job market, how that is for young black people right now. I feel terrible for these young kids that's coming out here right now. Some of them can't even read, can't even write, can't even count. You know what I'm saying? And they're all about consumerism. And it's not really their fault, because they've been constantly bombarded with advertisements to that effect. You got you got basketball players, you got singers, you got rappers. All these people contribute to the demise of these young people. I'm going to say this again, man. in order for us to really come out of this situation that we're in right now, because we only have a short period of time before it's going to all go bad. We got kids that don't even know nothing about technology. They're constantly falling behind. They do not know how to do nothing but rap, sing, party, get high. For the most part, I'm not saying all of our children, but for the most part, most of them definitely don't know anything about this new technology that's coming up. They got a computer in their pocket with every phone. They don't know nothing about it. They don't know how to utilize it. They don't know the first thing about making money with it. They don't know anything about having a business. They don't even have. I mean, when I was a kid, there were businesses in my community. I had people that I could look at and see they were running businesses. They were buying their house. They had nice cars. They dressed nice. You know what I'm saying? They were an example in the community. But now, these young folks don't have none of that. So we got to change that. So I'm going to leave us with this. I'm going to leave us with a quote from one of the guys that I really, really like. His name is Amos Wilson. I'm not going to even come back. I'm just going to show you this quote, and I'm out. But pay close heed to what this brother has in this quote, because therein lies our way out. Think about this for a minute. I'm out, y'all.